Chapter 2892. After knowing that Di Beichen had fainted, Si Tuyen, Mu Jin's, Lan Yunxiao, Mu Lingbing, Xiren, and Shangguan Yingying immediately rushed to Limitless Palace. When Xiren saw the unconscious Di Beichen, a vexed expression appeared on his face. "Damn it, I've searched through the treasury of the Cloud Sword sect but couldn't find these two medicinal ingredients. I've also asked around in other places but couldn't find them. Why are these two medicinal ingredients so unorthodox?" Xiren clenched his fists tightly. There was no longer the joking expression on his face. He and Di Beichen had grown up together and could be said to be true brothers. Now that Di Beichen had become like this, he felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. The last time Beichen told us about this he was still fine. How did he suddenly become like this? Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but ask. Previously, I had already discovered that this cursed physique was becoming more and more uncontrollable. Now it can be said to have completely erupted. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed, her face somewhat haggard. "Yishuan, although Beichen's physique problem is very important, you have to take care of yourself." Mu Lingbing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with heartache. She really didn't understand why the heavens would treat Hongzhuang like this. She had suffered too much. It wasn't easy for the bitterness to end, and now Di Beichen's physique problem flared up again. If they couldn't find those two medicinal ingredients, the following situation was simply unimaginable. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Ever since Di Beichen had fainted, she had been thinking about how to wake Di Beichen up. In a place where no one could see, she had also shed tears. However, she knew that she absolutely couldn't fall at this time. Just as Di Beichen had said, there was always a way out. She believed that God would not be too cruel to them. "I've sent people to investigate these two medicinal herbs." In the past, the medicine sect had sent people to collect these two medicinal herbs. However, the medicine sect consumes a large amount of medicinal herbs all year round, so I didn't pay much attention to it. Over the past few days, I've sent people to search for information about this, and I've only received this information. Before this, I had asked the medicine sect, and the medicine sect had said that they didn't have these two medicinal herbs. Si Tuyen said in a deep voice. Other than Bailey Hongzhuang, Si Tuyen was the most worried. He had raised Di Beichen and had long regarded Di Beichen as his own grandson. Now, looking at Di Beichen's pale face, he felt his heart ache. Hearing Si Tuyen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but feel puzzled. "Based on what I know, the possibility of the Violet Dragon Emperor ginseng and the tears of frigid flame being needed to refine pills is very small. Why would the medicine sect collect these two medicinal herbs? Could it be that the medicine sect knows that we need these two medicinal herbs but purposely didn't give them to us just to negotiate?" When Xiren's expression turned ugly. He had seen this kind of situation many times before. Si Tuyen pondered for a moment but did not give a definite answer. "It looks like we need to make a trip to the medicine sect." Lan Yunxiao spoke up. Regardless of whether the medicine sect had purposely kept the medicinal herbs to negotiate with them or if they had really used them, they had to personally inquire. Chapter 2893. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded at Lan Yunxiao's words. To them, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, they would never give up. "I'll stabilize Beichen's condition first before we set off." Bailey Hongzhuang spoke up. Mu Lingbing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's exhausted and haggard appearance and couldn't help but express her concern. "Yishuan, you've worked hard during this period of time. Why don't you let us make a trip to the medicine sect?" She understood the feelings between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen all too well. Now that Di Beichen has become like this, Bailey Hongzhuang must be both mentally and physically exhausted. She would have to rush about again. As a mother, her heart ached at the sight of this. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "I have a better understanding of medicinal herbs. It's better for me to go." The others did not know much about the Amethyst Dragon Emperor ginseng and the tears of frigid flame. If the medicine sect intended to deceive them, they would not be able to tell. As long as she was there, it would not be easy for the medicine sect to deceive them. Most importantly, based on Di Beichen's current condition, they could not delay any longer. The sooner they receive news, the more hope they would have. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other and did not continue to stop them. Under these circumstances, even if they allowed Bailey Hongzhuang to stay in the Limitless Palace, she would not be able to rest well. It would be better for her to go with them to the medicine sect. That way they would be more at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang watched over Di Beichen for an entire night. She only relaxed after confirming that Di Beichen would not encounter any problems in the following days. "Beichen, don't worry. I will find a way." Bailey Hongzhuang held Di Beichen's hand and murmured gently. She would not let Di Beichen leave her. She would protect her own happiness. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the room, Si Tuyen and the rest were already waiting for her. Let's go. This time only Si Tuyen and Lan Yunxiao were heading to the medicine sect. Mu Lingbing had originally planned to go with them, but Lan Yunxiao felt that there was no need for so many people to go with them. It would be better for Mu Lingbing to stay in the Tiangang sect and pay attention to Di Beichen's condition. In response, Mu Lingbing nodded her head. She knew that she would not be of much use even if she went along. On the contrary, she did not know what the medicine sect would think if a large group of people went. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were about to set off, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying also followed. Hongzhuang, let's go together. Xiren's face was full of seriousness. It was obvious that he had already made up his mind on this matter. Di Beichen was his best brother in this lifetime. Now that his brother was in trouble, he could not just sit around and wait for death. Instead of sitting around and worrying, he might as well go along. Who knows, he might even be able to help. Shangguan Yingying's attitude was the same as when Xiren's. The three of them had been good friends for so many years. The fact that they were unable to help Di Beichen was already very upsetting to them. At the very least, they had to do something. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at Si Tuyen and Lan Yunxiao. They had originally planned to go as the three of them. Si Tuyen thought for a moment before nodding and saying, "Let's go together." As members of the Cloud Sword sect, Xiren and Shangguan Yingying's purpose in going was different. This time they were not going to cause trouble for the medicine sect. They only wanted to obtain some useful information from the medicine sect. Chapter 2894. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest arrived at the medicine sect, the sect leader of the medicine sect, Gu Weisheng, was very surprised to see them. However, after thinking about it carefully, Gu Weisheng understood the purpose of Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's visit. Sect leader Situ, what a rare guest. Gu Weisheng smiled as he welcomed them. Although there had been some conflict between him and Situ Yen because of the alchemist competition, the conflict had been resolved after he had attended Bailey Hongzhuang's wedding. After all, in many sects such small frictions often occurred. Now that Tiangang sect's status was different, he would naturally not play such petty tricks in the future. Seeing Gu Weisheng's enthusiastic look, Situ Yen smiled. However, his smile did not reach his eyes. It was not because he still bore a grudge against Gu Weisheng for what had happened previously, but because he was worried about Di Beichen and could not feel happy at all. Master Lan, young Palace Lord Bailey, young Sect Master Wen, young Sect Master's wife, your presence brings light to the medicine sect's humble dwelling. Gu Weisheng was secretly surprised. Although only 5 people had come, these 5 people represented 4 different forces. If he did not receive them well, he would be in deep trouble. Sect leader Gu, I'm sure you know the purpose of our visit today. Situ Yen was not in the mood to talk about other things and went straight to the point. Hearing Situ Yan's words, Gu Weisheng looked at the serious expressions on Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's faces and was puzzled. What on earth had happened? Why would they show such expressions? Were those 2 medicinal herbs really that important to them? Seeing this, Gu Weisheng no longer pretended not to understand and asked, "Are you here for those 2 medicinal herbs?" Situ Yen nodded and said seriously, "That's right. If sect leader Gu has those 2 medicinal herbs, I hope you can take them out. We can discuss any conditions in exchange." Gu Weisheng was even more surprised when he heard Si Tian say something like that. This meant that he could ask for as much as he wanted. With Situ Yan's experience, he would normally not say such words. It could be seen that these 2 medicinal herbs were really important to them. Sect Master Situ, it's not that I don't want to help you in this matter. If the medicine sect had these 2 herbs, I would have taken them out a long time ago. The reason why we haven't taken them out is because we really don't have them. Gu Weisheng sighed. With Tiangang sect's current status and influence, he was eager for Tiangang sect to owe him a favor, but he really didn't. Sect leader Gu, I heard that you have purposely purchased these 2 medicinal herbs before? Bailey Hongzhuang slowly spoke. Her pitch-black eyes flickered with a shrewd and far-sighted light. According to my understanding, the possibility of these 2 medicinal herbs being used in refining medicine is very small. I wonder if Sect Master Gu could tell me the reason why you're purchasing these 2 medicinal herbs? Bailey Hongzhuang was very confident. Although she did not know all the pill formulas in the world, she knew most of them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Gu Weisheng was slightly stunned. He had forgotten that Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in the art of refining pills were extremely shocking. Chapter 2895. Young Palace Master Bailey, the use of these herbs is an internal matter of our sect. What I can tell you is that our sect doesn't have these two herbs anymore. Gu Weisheng's tone was serious. I can vouch for this with my moral standing. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of Situ Yen and the others could not help but become unsightly. In fact, they would rather Gu Weisheng was lying to them. That way they would at least have a chance to obtain these two herbs. Since Gu Weisheng had said this, they were afraid that they really didn't have them. Sect Master Gu, it's not that we doubt you, but can't you tell us the use of these two herbs? Ziren couldn't help but ask. Right now, the medicine sect was their only hope. Regardless of whether they could obtain these two herbs in the end, they had to at least give them a definite answer. Young Sect Master One, I've already said what I need to say. We really don't have these herbs. What's the point of knowing their use? This is an internal matter of our medicine sect. Gu Weisheng's expression was calm. It was obvious that he had already made up his mind and wasn't willing to speak. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's people couldn't help but frown. They felt that there was something fishy about this matter. If it was just an ordinary use, Gu Weisheng wouldn't need to hide it and would just tell them directly. However, his current appearance made them even more suspicious. Sect Master Gu, why don't we get straight to the point? Lan Yunxiao looked at Gu Weisheng with a serious expression on his elegant and handsome face. What do you want in order for you to tell us the specific use of these herbs? To be honest, these two medicinal ingredients have life-saving uses for us. If you don't tell us the specific uses, we will definitely have doubts in our hearts. If this affects the friendship between us and your sect, that wouldn't be too good. Gu Weisheng's expression couldn't help but change at Lan Yunxiao's words. Ever since Lan Yunxiao became the Lan family head, Gu Weisheng hadn't had the chance to interact with him. Previously he hadn't seen Lan Yunxiao speak, so he didn't pay much attention to him. However, he didn't expect that Lan Yunxiao would poke at the crux of the matter. A threat. Lan Yunxiao was threatening him. If he didn't clearly tell them about this matter, then it would mean that the Tiangang sect, Limitless Palace, Lan clan, and even the Clouds Word sect would become enemies with their medicine sect. Such a great price indeed caused him to have to carefully consider it. Situ Yen quietly glanced at Lan Yunxiao with admiration in his eyes. His son-in-law's ability was truly outstanding. No wonder the entire Lan family supported him to become the next family head. Lan family head, you're making things difficult for me? Gu Weisheng said in a deep voice. If it weren't for the fact that this matter is far too important to us, we would not have made things difficult for you. As long as you're willing to tell us about this matter, we will continue to maintain our friendship with the medicine sect. Lan Yunxiao's attitude didn't change. His eyes were clear and his tone was very sincere. This was often the case when two organizations come into contact with each other. Now that they were the stronger party, unless the medicine sect wants to make an enemy out of them, Gu Weisheng could only carefully think of a way to resolve this matter. Chapter 2896. Gu Weisheng had a troubled expression on his face. However, when he noticed Situ Yan's gloomy expression, he knew that things were not going well. He had known Situ Yan for many years, so he understood Situ Yan's personality very well. Once Situ Yan showed such an expression, it meant that he was truly enraged. Therefore he had to think carefully about how to solve this problem. Otherwise it would be very troublesome. As far as he knew, Limitless Palace was currently developing the art of medicine and poison. Furthermore, it was developing quite well. It was obvious that they wanted to replace the Yu family. Once they had developed, Limitless Palace's influence would reach its peak. If that was the case, things would become complicated if they were to become enemies with them. Sect Master C2, please calm down. Let me think about this first. Gu Weisheng looked at C2 Yen with a complicated look on his face as he slowly spoke. When they saw Gu Weisheng's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but look at each other. They already understood that Gu Weisheng was most likely going to tell them. However, Bailey Hongzhuang also had some doubts in her heart. There were only a few uses for these medicinal herbs. Gu Weisheng could have just told them directly. However, his hesitant look was definitely not because he was playing hard to get or because he wanted to use this opportunity to gain more benefits. Instead, he really did have some misgivings. This was very strange. Gu Weisheng thought for a moment before he said, I can tell you about this. However, aside from the items that you have to give in exchange, I have another request. Please speak. After I tell you about this, I hope that you won't tell anyone else. Gu Weisheng's expression was solemn and serious. His gaze continuously swept across Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If you can't guarantee this, then even if you want to become enemies with the medicine sect, I won't tell you. When they saw Gu Weisheng's attitude, C2 Yen and the others realized that this was not an ordinary matter. It probably involved the medicine sect's secret. I swear that we won't tell anyone about this. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate at all. To her, she did not care about the medicine sect's secret. She only wanted to know if the medicine sect had lied to her about this matter. If she could obtain some information about these two medicinal herbs, that would be great. We can also swear an oath, Situ Yen and the others quickly said. Seeing the attitude of Situ Yen and the others, Gu Weisheng heaved a sigh of relief. As cultivators, especially those who had reached the status of Situ Yen and the others, their promises were extremely trustworthy. If that's the case, I can tell you, but you have to give me something in exchange. Speak your mind. In the next second, Gu Weisheng's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. I heard that young Palace Master Bailey has the pill formula for the rejuvenation pill. As soon as he said that, Situ Yen and the others could not help but change their expressions. Sect Leader Gu, although your information is very secretive, the rejuvenation pill's formula is extremely precious. You're asking for too much. Gu Weisheng was stunned and quickly said, "You've misunderstood. I don't want this rejuvenation pill's pill formula. I just want to ask for a rejuvenation pill from young Palace Master Bailey." Hearing this, Situ Yen and the others' expressions softened. However, their eyes then turned towards Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't know much about alchemists, but they knew in their hearts that Gu Weisheng wanted this rejuvenation pill. It was likely that a large part of the reason was that he wanted to research the true formula of this rejuvenation pill. Chapter 2897. To Bailey Hongzhuang, nothing was more important than Di Beichen's safety. Even though the miracle cure pill's formula was precious, it was only a benefit. Di Beichen was her everything. Besides, even if the medicine sect had obtained the miracle cure pill, it would not be an easy task to research the pill formula from just one pill. If it were that simple, all pill formulas in the Xingshan continent would be transparent and would not be considered a secret at all. Gu Weisheng's eyes flashed with shock when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed without any hesitation. Ever since the news of Bailey Hongzhuang possessing the miracle cure pill's formula had spread, many organizations had requested to obtain the miracle cure pill. After all, no one wanted to see the day when their appearance would age. As a cultivator, their lifespan was naturally longer than that of an ordinary person. It would be best if their appearance could remain unchanged. However, up until now, Bailey Hongzhuang had not produced a single miracle cure pill. Even though many people were envious, there was nothing they could do about it. Even Gu Weisheng himself felt envious when he saw that Situ Yen had regained his youthful appearance. Since that's the case, it's settled then. Gu Weisheng smiled. I don't have any miracle cure pills on me at the moment. I'll send someone to deliver them to you personally in a few days. Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Based on young Palace Master Bailey's character, I naturally trust you. Now, can you tell me what's going on? Gu Weisheng looked at the crowd before he said, Actually, I didn't collect these two medicinal herbs for my own use. Another organization had asked me to find them for them. Once I'd found them, I immediately sent them over. I've never used them myself. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and in their hearts, there was a bit of disbelief. What kind of organization would ask the medicine sect to find them for them? Situ Yen quickly asked. If it was only a vague answer, it would not be worth a single miracle cure pill at all. Since we've come to this point, I won't hide it anymore. Gu Weisheng's expression was serious. Sect Master Situ, at our level, I'm sure we all know about Penglai Island, right? As soon as these words came out, Situ Yan's expression couldn't help but change. His voice also lowered a bit. You mean the news from Penglai Island asked you to collect these two medicinal herbs? Gu Weisheng nodded. That's right. Who are you? Did he mention the reason for collecting these two medicinal herbs? Gu Weisheng shook his head. You know as well that no one on Penglai Island is simple. The medicine sect has always needed many medicinal herbs, so we have a certain connection with Penglai Island's auction house. The reason why I collected these two herbs was because of the news from the auction house. I just wanted to exchange them for some other things. According to the information I received, there should be someone on Penglai Island who purposely collected these two medicinal herbs. I have already sent all the herbs I collected to Penglai Island. These two kinds of herbs are very precious and the production is very low. I haven't collected them in recent years. I see. A look of understanding flashed across Situ Yan's face. I didn't know that the medicine sect had a connection with Penglai Island. Chapter 2898. Situ Yan nodded. Don't worry. Since we've already made a promise, we naturally won't tell anyone about this. That's good. Gu Weisheng finally revealed a relieved smile. If it was anyone else, Gu Weisheng would definitely not reveal this matter. However, the pressure brought by Situ Yan's group wasn't small, and he trusted Situ Yan's character. Although Situ Yan understood everything, Bailey Hongzhuang, Wen Ziren, and Shengguan Yingying were all confused. Penglai Island? They had never heard of such a place before. Lan Yunxiao's expression also changed. When he heard the words Penglai Island, he already understood why Gu Weisheng was so careful about this matter. It turned out that it involved such a colossus. Sect Master Gu, is the auction house you're talking about the only one on Penglai Island? Lan Yunxiao couldn't help but ask. Since that auction house had collected these two medicinal ingredients, perhaps it still had them. No matter what, this was still a glimmer of hope. Gu Weisheng didn't find it strange that Lan Yunxiao knew about Penglai Island. In fact, all the leaders of the various large factions knew about Penglai Island. The reason why news about Penglai Island rarely spread was because it was simply too powerful. Ordinary people simply couldn't come into contact with it. That's right. There's only one auction house. Many thanks. Lan Yunxiao cupped his hands. It seems that we've obtained all the information we wanted. In that case, we won't continue to disturb you. We'll send someone to deliver the rejuvenation pill in a few days. There's no rush for the rejuvenation pill. Gu Weisheng revealed a smile. Since you all have matters to attend to, I won't keep you any longer. Farewell. Farewell. Soon after, Situ Yan's group left the medicine sect. They had already obtained all the information they wanted. From Gu Weisheng's attitude, they could see that he had already said everything he needed to say. There was no meaning in staying any longer. Grandfather, father, what exactly is this Penglai Island? Bailey Hongzhuang's bright black phoenix eyes were filled with doubt. She didn't understand why Si Tuyen and Lan Yunxiao's faces changed like that when they heard about Penglai Island. What kind of existence was that? With their status, how could they avoid mentioning Penglai Island so much? Ziren and Shangguan Yingying were also confused. They stared at Situ Yen and Shangguan Yingying, wanting to know the answer from them. The Xingxian continent is vast and boundless, and there are countless great powers. Naturally, there are even more experts among experts. Actually, although we are already considered a top force in the Xingxian continent, there is still a place with a transcendent position called the Penglai Island. Si Tian looked at the confused faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two and opened his mouth to explain. Normal people might not even know of the existence of Penglai Island in their entire lives. In fact, only those who have reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm and above can come into contact with Penglai Island. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but gasp. 5th level of the Purple Realm. Even in the entire Xingxian continent, there weren't many who had reached this level. Chapter 2899. If you want to enter Penglai Island, you must be at least at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. That place is filled with true experts. Actually, the number of cultivators in the Xingxian continent is enormous, so the number of experts is much more than you can imagine. However, many of these experts have gone to Penglai Island, so you don't think there are many of them. Hearing Si Tuyen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with understanding. She had thought about this problem before. In her previous life, the number of experts in the Xingxian continent wasn't small. In comparison, the number of experts in the Xingxian continent 1,000 years later was much less. So it turned out that Penglai Island was one of them. Penglai Island is where all the experts gather? Then why do they gather there? Ziren was still confused and couldn't understand. Si Tian pondered for a moment, then shook his head. I'm also not sure about this point. According to what I know, Penglai Island is a very mystical place. The cultivation resources there are much more abundant than here. It seems that all the best resources in the Xingxian continent are gathered there. Moreover, people with abnormally powerful cultivations often appear there. As for how they came to be, no one knows. Lan Yunxiao slowly said, I've only heard about it. I've never been to Penglai Island myself. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but fall into silence after hearing this. Even Si Tuyen and Lan Yunxiao didn't know about it. It seemed that there were very few people who knew about Penglai Island. In that case, the Amethyst Dragon Emperor Ginseng and the Tears of Frigid Flame should be on Penglai Island. I'm afraid that we've already collected all of them here. Ziren's voice was heavy. Then what should we do about Beichen? This kind of precious medicinal ingredient was something that could only be encountered and not sought. Since it had already been collected, it would be extremely difficult to find it again. As soon as these words came out, the hearts of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but sink. This was the biggest problem. Only those who have reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm can go to Penglai Island? Bailey Hongzhuang asked unwillingly. Right now, Penglai Island's auction house was their only chance. However, her current cultivation was only at the 2nd level of the Purple Realm. She originally thought that her cultivation speed was already not slow, but it was clear that there was still a large gap between her and the 5th level of the Purple Realm. By the time she raised her strength to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, it would be too late. Lan Yunxiao shook his head. That's not the case. There are always other ways to lower the conditions. What is it? You and Beichen are both inheritors of the Blood Tower, so you only need to reach the 1st level of the Purple Realm to enter Penglai Island. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Why is that? Ever since she obtained the inheritance of the Blood Tower, the Blood Chi Field had helped her a lot. However, she never thought that the Blood Chi Field would be able to lower the conditions to enter Penglai Island. This was truly strange. There's no need to find it strange. It's because the demonic cultivation abyss of the 3 Great Abyss is on Penglai Island. As the inheritors of the Bloodground Abyss, you can enter Penglai Island earlier than others. I see. Chapter 2900. Among them, the Bloodground Abyss and the Demonic Cultivation Abyss were places that everyone had the opportunity to visit. As for the Bitter Sea Abyss, no one knew where it was. However, ever since Bailey Hongzhuang came into contact with the Bloodground Abyss, she had never heard of the Demonic Cultivation Abyss. She had once asked Di Beichen about this, but Di Beichen clearly didn't know much about it either. Thus, she had always been doubtful about it. She didn't expect the Demonic Cultivation Abyss to be on Penglai Island. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying also widened their mouths. They originally thought that they already knew enough about the Xingshan continent, but now it seemed that there were still many secrets that they didn't know. In that case, I can go to Penglai Island. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. No matter what, as long as there was a chance, it was extremely good. Perhaps, after reaching Penglai Island, they could obtain these 2 medicinal herbs from the auction house. Although the process wouldn't be simple just by thinking about it, it was still an opportunity that they absolutely couldn't give up. The medicine sect's influence on the Xingshan continent was not small. Furthermore, it was the gathering place for alchemists, so it had the most channels to collect medicinal herbs. In the past 2 years, even the medicine sect couldn't collect them, so it was likely that they wouldn't be able to find them in the Xingshan continent. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lan Yunxiao and the others' expressions couldn't help but become more serious. Yixuan, this matter isn't that simple. Although you can enter Penglai Island with your current cultivation, there are countless experts there. The weakest one is at least at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. If you go, it will be very dangerous. Lan Yunxiao's voice was slightly heavy. In my opinion, why don't you let me go? In the Xingshan continent, with their cultivation, they didn't need to worry about anything. However, once they went to Penglai Island, they would need to be careful everywhere. The slightest carelessness could cause them to lose their lives. And with Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation, the possibility of losing her life was even greater. That's right. Why don't Yun Xiao and I go to Penglai Island? Hongzhuang, you stay in Limitless Palace and take good care of Beichen. We will think of a way to get the herbs back. Situ Yen nodded. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. She really didn't want her grandfather and father to take such a risk because of them. Whether it was Situ Yen or Lan Yunxiao, they had suffered many hardships in the past few years. It wasn't easy for them to have their current carefree days. Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to accept it if something happened during the trip to Penglai Island. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang already had an answer. Grandfather, father, I know you're doing this for my own good, but this is between me and Beichen. Let's settle it ourselves. No matter what the future was like, whether they could return safely or not, this was their fate. It was never Bailey Hongzhuang's style to sit and wait for death. She also couldn't accept watching her loved ones risk their lives for her. Thus this was her answer. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's decision attracted the unanimous opposition of Situ Yen and Lan Yunxiao. No, the risk is too great. Absolutely not. This was the first time Bailey Hongzhuang had seen Situ Yen and Lan Yunxiao's expressions of rejection. While she was astonished, she couldn't help but feel a bit of warmth in her heart. Chapter 2901. Seeing Situ Yen and Lan Yunxiao's unyielding attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang knew she wouldn't be able to convince them in a short time. She couldn't help but say, "Why don't we return to Limitless Palace first and discuss this matter later?" Hearing this, Situ Yen and Lan Yunxiao's expressions eased a little as they nodded. Bailey Hongzhuang had already overcome all obstacles to get to where she was now. She hadn't even lived a comfortable life for long before something like this happened. Bailey Hongzhuang's previous sufferings were all because of them. How could they bear to see their granddaughter endure this kind of danger again? Lan Yunxiao had already made up his mind. In the past he didn't take good care of Bailey Hongzhuang and doted on her like she was the apple of his eye. But now he had to shelter his daughter from the wind and rain. Otherwise he wasn't fit to be a father. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at each other when they saw this scene. Di Beichen's problem was much more serious than they imagined. Even if they really went to Penglai Island, they couldn't guarantee that they would be able to find these two medicinal ingredients. On the contrary, they might even lose their lives. Speaking of which, the current situation was truly perplexing. When Bailey Hongzhuang's group returned to Limitless Palace, Mu Lingbing and the rest immediately rushed over to ask about the results. However, Mu Lingbing and the rest's hearts sank when they heard the news. This wasn't good news at all. It could only be said that there was a glimmer of hope amidst all the bad news. Yixuan, your father is right. Let him go. You stay here and wait for the news. Mu Lingbing's eyes flashed with determination. Although Penglai Island was filled with experts and their future was uncertain, she still believed in Lan Yunxiao's ability. Apart from this method there was no better way. I'll go with you. Yu Linfeng followed up and said, I was originally very curious about this Penglai Island and wanted to explore it for a long time. It's just that Limitless Palace had many trivial matters that I was worried about. Now that Hongzhuang is here, I can go and take a look with peace of mind. As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Yu Linfeng. They didn't expect Yu Linfeng to make such a decision. Although Yu Linfeng said that he wanted to take a look himself, everyone knew in their hearts that the reason he did so was entirely because of Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing that everyone was so considerate of her, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also moved. There's no need to rush now. Let me think of other ways to stabilize Beichen's condition first. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, I still have a seed of the sacred ice lotus. It should be of some help to Beichen's condition. The seed of the sacred ice lotus was a treasure that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained during the Battle of Zhuolu. It had the effect of reviving the dead. Although Di Beichen's condition wasn't reviving the dead, the effects of the sacred ice lotus couldn't be ignored. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's eyes lit up. Everyone had heard of the sacred ice lotus. It was more precious than the amethyst dragon emperor ginseng and the tears of frigid flame. It was something that could only be encountered by chance. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to have it. Chapter 2902. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang stayed by Di Beichen's bedside, deep in thought. Beichen, it's because everyone is so considerate of us that I can't let them take this risk. I believe that if you were awake your thoughts would be the same as mine. Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. She didn't think that things would turn out like this. However, no matter how bleak the future was, at least there was still a glimmer of hope. She believed that there would always be a way out. Since Penglai Island lowered the entry standards for cultivators who had inherited the blood aura, it meant that people who were at the first level of the Purple Realm could survive on Penglai Island. Everything would go right when it came to it. How would she know the real situation if she didn't see it for herself? Back then, when she found out about her background, she also felt immense pressure. It was like an impossible task. But now she had completed it one by one. She believed that she would be able to do it this time. Master. The three beasties appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. They knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was very sad. Now they all looked sad and were not as lively as they usually were. No matter what choice you make, we will support you. The three beasties looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with shining eyes. Di Beichen was unconscious. At least they were by Master's side. Isn't it just Penglai Island? We will definitely be able to conquer it. Xiao He said with lofty sentiments. Xiao Bai nodded. This place is also a place of opportunity. Maybe the situation isn't as bad as we think. There's still a chance. What are you afraid of? So many people can go. With Master's strength and the cooperation of the three of us, there's still hope. White Lion was still fearless. In any case, it felt that its master was the most powerful, and everyone else had to step aside. Looking at the three beasties who were trying their best to comfort her, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She reached out her hand and patted the three furry little guys. Fortunately, these three little fellows had always been unwavering in their support. In fact, she was not a reckless person. Although she was only at the second level of the Purple Realm, there was still a large gap between her and a fifth-level Purple Realm cultivator. However, she had the existence of the blood aura field. Moreover, she had been cultivating in the desert world for such a long time. Her combat strength had also improved greatly. The strength of the three beasties had also increased by a step. Once they joined forces, even if they were to encounter a cultivator at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, they might still have a chance of winning. It seems that you all already know my plan, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. The three beasts nodded in unison. What are you afraid of? Take responsibility for your own problems. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You're right. What's there to be afraid of? Ever since her previous life, when had she ever been afraid? Master, is the seed of the sacred frost lotus really useful to Di Beichen? Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with doubt. The sacred frost lotus was indeed a treasure, but for Di Beichen's current condition, it really wasn't sure if it was useful. Treating the symptoms but not the root cause. The sacred frost lotus has a wide range of effects. As long as it's an illness, it will have a certain effect. However, it still can't change Beichen's body constitution. Chapter 2903. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the unconscious Di Beichen. She could only hope that the effects of the sacred ice lotus would be outstanding enough to wake Di Beichen up. She had only met one person with the cursed body in the past and did not have much experience. Furthermore, Di Beichen's cursed body was far purer than the person she had met in her previous life. Therefore, the effects were even more difficult to determine. However, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, she would not give up. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang fed the sacred ice lotus seed into Di Beichen's mouth. The sparkling lotus seed melted in his mouth and turned into pure energy once it entered Di Beichen's mouth. It flowed into his limbs and bones. Bailey Hongzhuang stayed by Di Beichen's side and observed his changes. However, Di Beichen's eyes were still tightly shut and there were no changes. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart, which was originally full of expectations, could not help but gradually sink. Could it be that this cursed body was so terrifying that even the sacred ice lotus could not change it in the slightest? The three beasts were also standing by Di Beichen's bed. After noticing this change, they could not help but reveal a look of disappointment. They did not expect this to be the result. Bailey Hongzhuang was in a daze when she heard a gentle and familiar voice calling out to her. Wife. It was Di Beichen's voice. She felt a warm touch on her cheeks as if Di Beichen was caressing her cheeks. Bailey Hongzhuang's consciousness gradually woke up. After realizing that she had such a dream, she did not want to open her eyes. She only wanted to sink into this dream for a while longer. Tears could not help but fall from the corners of her eyes. She really hoped that Di Beichen could still be by her side and gently call out to her wife. Unfortunately, Di Beichen had fallen into a coma. If she couldn't find those 2 medicinal herbs, she might never be able to hear such sounds again, or feel such sensations in the future. Wife, what's wrong? The gentle voice was a little hoarse, but more than that, it was filled with concern and heartache. Bailey Hongzhuang felt the warm hand wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. Such a familiar and real feeling made her feel blessed. However, this feeling seemed a little too real. Master, Di Beichen is awake. After waking up, the three beasties could not help but look at Di Beichen in surprise. They had waited for Di Beichen the entire night and did not see any reaction from Di Beichen. They did not expect to see Di Beichen wake up as soon as they opened their eyes. This was really a pleasant surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang originally felt that this feeling was too real. She was only afraid that she would not be able to feel this feeling after waking up, so she was unwilling to open her eyes. At this moment, when she heard the three beasties' words, she could not help but open her eyes. She saw that Di Beichen, who had been sleeping all this time, had unknowingly sat up and was looking at her with a face full of heartache. Wife, don't cry. Bailey Hongzhuang stared blankly at the figure in front of her. This handsome and familiar face was the one she had been thinking about day and night. He had really woken up. Beichen, you're awake. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a light of excitement. Her entire being was abnormally excited. Di Beichen nodded and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a gaze full of heartache. Yes, I'm awake. Chapter 2904. As soon as Di Beichen opened his eyes, he saw Bailey Hongzhuang sleeping tiredly by the side of the bed. He could not remember what had happened. He only remembered that he had been talking to Yulin Feng. However, he did not know why, but when he woke up again he was already lying on the bed. He could see the fatigue on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. He thought that his coma this time must have made Bailey Hongzhuang extremely worried. Earlier, Bailey Hongzhuang had been very worried about his physical condition. This time his cursed body had acted up. It was easy to imagine how worried Bailey Hongzhuang was. However, he did not expect that just by calling out to her, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes began to tear. Her aggrieved and frightened look was clearly displayed even in her sleep. Di Beichen only felt a deep pain in his heart. He had actually made Hongzhuang so sad. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen with teary eyes. She was afraid that everything in front of her was an illusion, an illusion. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang pulled her into her arms and felt the warmth and reality of the hug, as well as the strong arms, she could not help but lean on Di Beichen's shoulder to vent her emotions. She was so afraid that Di Beichen would never wake up again. Although she had been pretending to be strong on the surface, her entire person had been like a string that was about to collapse. She did not dare to think about the consequences of failure. Therefore, she had been comforting herself that she would not fail. However, in the depths of her heart, there was a reality that reminded her. Once she failed, it would be completely over. Di Beichen felt the clothes on his shoulders gradually becoming softer. He hugged Bailey Hongzhuang tightly and gently patted Bailey Hongzhuang's back with his right hand. He didn't know how long he had slept, but judging from Hongzhuang's behavior, he could tell that it wasn't a short time. Otherwise Hongzhuang wouldn't be so panicked. "Wife, I will always be by your side. Don't be afraid." Di Beichen spoke softly to calm Bailey Hongzhuang down. As he fell into a coma, he only felt that he was in darkness. He could vaguely hear Bailey Hongzhuang's voice. And it was this voice that made him unwilling to immerse himself in the darkness, so he had been working hard to walk out of the darkness. However, the darkness was too deep and it was not easy to walk out. Even though he had done his best, there was still a force shackling him, preventing him from breaking through the darkness. It wasn't until an ice-cold energy appeared in his body that he broke through the darkness. After a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang finally calmed down. She looked at Di Beichen with her red and swollen eyes, but her eyes were unusually bright. No matter what, Di Beichen had woken up. This was the happiest thing for her. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's red and swollen eyes, Di Beichen's eyes were filled with tenderness. This Hongzhuang really made his heart ache. In the next second, Di Beichen kissed Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips. Just like how Bailey Hongzhuang was afraid of losing him, how could he not be afraid of never seeing Bailey Hongzhuang again? Seeing this, the three beasts tactfully chose to leave. Ever since their master and Di Beichen got married, they had already gotten used to it. After a moment, Di Beichen released Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "Don't cry anymore. My heart aches when I see you." Chapter 2905. Under Di Beichen's burning gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang blushed and said, "Let me take your pulse and see how you're doing." Although Di Beichen had woken up, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but worry after a moment of joy. Although the effect of the sacred ice lotus was good, she wasn't sure how much of an effect it would have on Di Beichen's cursed body. If it only allowed Di Beichen to wake up temporarily, then the situation would undoubtedly be very bad. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who had her head lowered, and a trace of seriousness flashed through his deep eyes. He naturally did not want to leave Bailey Hongzhuang, but even he was unable to determine his own constitution. He really hoped that he did not have the cursed body. Then there would not be so many problems. He was more worried that if the results were not good, Hongzhuang would not be able to take it. For a moment, the room fell silent. Only the soft breathing of the two could be heard. Neither of them wanted the other to find out about their worries, so they were both hiding it from each other. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand trembled as she took Di Beichen's pulse. However, as she checked Di Beichen's pulse, the sadness in her eyes gradually dissipated. "Beichen, the condition of your cursed body has been suppressed. It has regressed a lot." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in pleasant surprise. This was undoubtedly excellent news. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen also smiled. "In that case, we don't have to worry about it flaring up in the short term?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "It won't flare up for at least a year or two. I can't be sure about the situation after that. However, this will give us at least a year or two to find the herbs." The cursed body was an extremely powerful constitution. As for the heavenly mandate body, it was a constitution that all cultivators dreamed of. Suppressing the cursed body was an extremely difficult task. It was because of this that Bailey Hongzhuang had felt so hopeless before. The effects of the sacred frost lotus were much better than Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. In a year or two they might really have hope. Di Beichen's face could not help but reveal a smile. Not to mention whether or not he would be able to find the two herbs in these 2 years, at least he could spend such a long time with Bailey Hongzhuang. This was already a blessing. "Beichen, do you know Penglai Island?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen. She had originally planned to put Di Baichen in the Chaos Ring and head to Penglai Island. Now that Di Baichen had woken up, this was undoubtedly the best. Di Baichen raised his eyebrows and shook his head. What is that place? Bailey Hongzhuang was not surprised that Di Baichen did not know about it. Thinking about it, they should only know about it after breaking through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly told Di Baichen about the information they obtained from the medicine sect and the existence of Penglai Island. After hearing all this, Di Baichen was also stunned. I never thought that there would be such a place in the Shengxian continent. We have already collected the Amethyst Dragon Emperor Ginseng and the Tears of Frigid Flame, so our only chance is to go to Penglai Island. Chapter 2906. Grandfather, father, and master planned to go to Penglai Island to look for medicinal herbs for us after knowing about this. However, there are many masters on Penglai Island. It can be said that danger and opportunity coexist. I think grandfather and the others have known about the existence of Penglai Island for a long time, but they have never thought of going there. This has already explained a lot. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Baichen immediately understood Bailey Hongzhuang's meaning. So, if I didn't wake up today, you plan to go there alone? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and smiled. I plan to take you with me. Originally, she also wanted to let Di Baichen stay here. However, among everyone, she knew Di Baichen's physical condition the best. If something happened while she was away, all the doctors would be helpless. Therefore, only she and Di Baichen could go together. No matter what happened to Di Baichen's condition, she could think of a way. Di Baichen stretched out his hand and flicked Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows. His face was full of blame. You silly girl. However, when he said this, he was full of heartache. Bailey Hongzhuang's plan was to risk her life for him. With the cultivation of Situyen and the others, they had to be careful when going to Penglai Island, let alone Bailey Hongzhuang going there alone. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally heard the heartache in Di Baichen's words. In the eyes of others, her idea was indeed a bit crazy and full of danger. However, she knew very well that it was all worth it. Fortunately, you have woken up now. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked and smiled. You're right. We can't let everyone take risks for my condition. Why don't you let me go to Penglai Island this time? If I can come back, it will undoubtedly be best. If I don't come back, you will forget me. Di Baichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. His dark and deep eyes flashed with a trace of sadness and determination. Since the land of Penglai was full of danger, he would let him explore it himself. Anyway, he only had 1 or 2 years left. If he died, it would be no pity. Listening to Di Baichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's face immediately changed. What nonsense are you talking about? If you want to go, we should go together. Wife, listen to me. Di Baichen's voice. This was the best way at present. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not give Di Baichen a chance to speak. I won't listen. If you want to go, then let's go together. If you want to go alone, I promise I'll go with you. Instead of this, it is better for us to go together. At least we can take care of each other. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was unusually firm. She had encountered many dangers along the way, but Di Baichen had always been by her side. Now that Di Baichen was in danger, but she had to wait here. That was absolutely unacceptable. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was so firm, Di Baichen could not help but frown. He said, Wife, I don't want you to be in danger. Do you think I want you to be in danger? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Di Baichen was speechless for a moment. Thinking about it, if he stood in Hongzhuang's position, he would definitely not agree. Chapter 2907. What a person seeks in life is not a long life. If you're no longer here, then what's the point of me living alone? Bailey Hongzhuang seriously looked at Di Baichen. She had never thought that there would be a day when she would have to leave Di Baichen. If Di Baichen wasn't in her life, then there was no point in her living. So what if her lifespan was long? Just like when her grandfather was searching for her grandmother, how could he have been happy during those dozens of years? At least, her grandfather still had a trace of hope in his heart at that time. If he didn't even have this trace of hope, then he would truly be a walking corpse. Di Baichen, who originally wanted to persuade Bailey Hongzhuang, fell into silence after hearing her words. Perhaps Bailey Hongzhuang was right. He didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to be in any danger, but if he did, then Bailey Hongzhuang would be even more unhappy. Thinking of this, Di Baichen couldn't help but reach out and pull Bailey Hongzhuang into his embrace. With a wife like this, what more could a husband ask for? Let's go together. Di Beichen's voice was low and hoarse, but it was filled with joy and determination. He believed that they would definitely find those two medicinal ingredients because he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally relaxed and revealed a smile. We can't spread the news that we're going to Penglai Island. Otherwise, Father and the others will definitely stop us. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to Di Beichen. Lan Yunxiao and the others were probably feeling the same. If they told them, they would definitely go themselves. Then we can only lie. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and revealed a tacit smile. It seemed like they had the same idea. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen walked out of the room together, Mu Lingbing and the others were pleasantly surprised to see that Di Beichen was safe and sound. Beichen, you've already woken up. Di Beichen faintly smiled with an apologetic expression. I was unconscious and made everyone worry. Lan Yunxiao and the others sighed in relief. Whether it was Di Beichen or Bailey Hongzhuang, they were extremely worried. Now that Di Beichen had woken up, most likely the sacred frost lotus. Yishuan, how is Beichen right now? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but ask. The sacred frost lotus is very effective. It has temporarily suppressed the problem of his cursed physique. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Situ Yen nodded. Then we can be at ease. At least Beichen won't have any problems for the time being, right? We'll prepare to head to Penglai Island in a few days and try to bring back those two medicinal ingredients as soon as possible. After making this decision yesterday, Situ Yen and the others began to make preparations. Penglai Island wasn't like this place. If they wanted to go, they had to be fully prepared. Otherwise, the slightest carelessness could lead to danger. Moreover, the items sold at Penglai Island's auction house were definitely extremely valuable. If they wanted to bid for those two medicinal ingredients, they would naturally need to prepare a lot of money. After all, with their cultivation, it would be very difficult to rob on Penglai Island. Chapter 2908. Lan Yunxiao and Yu Linfeng also revealed smiles. Don't worry. No matter what, we will definitely find that medicinal ingredient. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. Although they already knew of Si Tian's plan, they still couldn't help but feel a wave of warmth in their hearts. Grandfather, Beichen's constitution has already been suppressed. There won't be any problems for at least 10 years, so I discussed it with Beichen. For now, there's no need to rush to Penglai Island. Since there's still a long time, why don't we wait until our strength reaches a certain level before going? That way we'll have more confidence. Moreover, we also want to experience the demonic cultivation abyss. If we're lucky, we might even be able to obtain the inheritance of the murderous aura. Bailey Hongzhuang told the story that she and Di Beichen had already discussed. Only then would everyone believe it. Si Tian's group, who had already made up their minds, couldn't help but be startled. There won't be any problems for at least 10 years? The sacred frost lotus already has the effect of reviving the dead. Although it's not specifically used to change Beichen's constitution, the effect is still very good. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have been so worried. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with joy as she sighed in her heart. Although she had thought about the sacred frost lotus before, she felt that the two weren't the right medicine for the illness. Yesterday she had also tried it out with the idea of treating a dead horse as if it were still alive. However, the effect was clearly much better than she had imagined. Si Tian's group looked at each other and fell into deep thought. The sacred frost lotus had the effect of reviving the dead. As long as one didn't completely lose their life, using the sacred frost lotus could bring them back to life. Thus, when they heard Bailey Hongzhuang say that it had such an effect, no one doubted it. If there really is 10 years, then it's better to cultivate for a few years before going. That way our chances of success will be greater, Mu Jin slowly said. Although Si Tian's group of 3 had already reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm, they would only be the most ordinary existence in Penglai Island. There would be many accidents. If he had a few more years, his chances of winning would be much higher. Nangong Wu followed up and said, "That's right, 10 years is enough. Why don't we wait for your strength to increase by 2 levels? This way we can be more prepared. Why don't we make this decision?" Mu Lingbing's face was beaming with joy. Her originally tense mood had completely relaxed today. In truth, when Lan Yunxiao's group decided to head to Penglai Island, they were also very worried. However, Di Beichen's cursed physique was too serious, so they had no other choice. However, now that they had 10 years, they could make more preparations. Situ Yen and the other 2 pondered for a moment before they nodded. Since that's the case, let's go after we're more prepared. Situ Yen nodded. Let's take advantage of this period of time to improve our cultivation. It's also a good opportunity to understand more about the situation on Penglai Island. Then let's find out more about the situation and make a plan before we go. Chapter 2909. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen relaxed when they saw that Lan Yunxiao and the others had changed their minds after hearing the news. The originally tense atmosphere dissipated just like that. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief and everything returned to normal. After making their plans, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen weren't in a hurry to leave. They only knew of Penglai Island's existence but didn't have any understanding of it. They didn't even know the route to get there. Thus, they had to understand everything clearly before they set off. Lan Yunxiao and the others didn't put this matter aside because of the 10 years that had passed. Instead, they went everywhere to inquire about Penglai Island. If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible for them to inquire about Penglai Island. However, with Lan Yunxiao and the others' status, it wasn't a problem to inquire about it. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were very interested in this matter, Lan Yunxiao and the others didn't hide any information and told them everything they knew. In their opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were originally geniuses and had also obtained the inheritance of the Bloodgrave Abyss. It was very normal for them to want to know about the Devil Cultivation Abyss. Once their cultivation reached a certain level, it wouldn't be a bad thing for them to wander around Penglai Island. To Lan Yunxiao and Yu Linfeng, going to Penglai Island wasn't necessarily a bad thing either. However, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had just broken free from their previous torment with great difficulty and enjoyed a short period of time. For the time being, they didn't have any plans to go. Moreover, the Lan family had just fallen into Lan Yunxiao's hands, so it wasn't suitable for him to leave. During this process, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's understanding of Penglai Island gradually deepened. Moreover, their usual behavior didn't arouse the slightest bit of suspicion. Not long after when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying returned to the Cloud Sword sect, they heard the news that Di Beichen had awakened and immediately rushed over. After seeing that Di Beichen had woken up, Xiren's face couldn't help but reveal a big smile. He stretched out his hand and punched Di Beichen. "Good lad. I knew that you were blessed and would never fall just like that." Although he said that, when Xiren's eyes were slightly red. Di Beichen was his only brother, yet something like this had happened to him. Previously he had been extremely worried. Fortunately, Di Beichen had already woken up. Hearing this, Di Beichen chuckled. "That's natural. Since I was a child, when have I not been lucky? Beichen, it's great that you've woken up. You've really made us worried to death." Shangguan Yingying breathed a sigh of relief. Previously, when Di Beichen had fallen into a coma, Xiren's mood had been terrible to the extreme. However, they could only worry helplessly and couldn't do anything. "When I came here earlier, I already heard that the sacred frost lotus has suppressed your physique. There won't be any problems for the next 10 years? When Xiren couldn't help but ask. This news was much better than what they had imagined. Di Beichen nodded. "That's natural. Wait until our strength increases a little more, then we'll prepare to head to Penglai Island. If you're interested, you can come along." Seeing Di Beichen make such an unrestrained joke, Xiren completely relaxed. Chapter 2910. Taking advantage of this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang began to refine the rejuvenation pill. She had promised to give the medicine sect a rejuvenation pill, so naturally, she had to keep her promise. Even though Gu Weisheng had said that there was no rush, she would be leaving soon. Before that, she had to give the pill to the medicine sect to prevent people from gossiping. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang had entered the primordial chaos ring to refine pills every night. They were about to leave for Penglai Island. Along the way they might encounter various dangers. This pill was definitely the most important thing to prepare. Most importantly, if they wanted to obtain the 2 medicinal herbs from the auction house, they would have to pay a hefty price. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were not poor people, it was obvious that there would not be any poor people in a place like Penglai Island. With their current net worth, it was probably not enough. Furthermore, they could not earn money legitimately. All they could do was refine more pills and hope that they could use them to exchange for medicinal herbs when the time comes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen carried out all of this in a low-key manner. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's behavior was extremely normal. Hence, no one knew what they were thinking. "Beichen, we will be leaving tomorrow. However, Xiren and the rest are still here. I'm really sorry." Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. After Di Beichen's coma, she finally understood the brotherly relationship between Di Beichen and Xiren. This time, Ziren had stayed in Limitless Palace for a few days because he wanted to see his own brother more. They had grown up together. However, as they gradually grew older, they did not have much time to spend together. Both of them had to stay in their own sections. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's eyes lit up. Even though he and Ziren were not blood brothers, they were closer than blood brothers. It's fine. I'll go have a drink with Ziren tonight. As long as we can return safely, it's just that we won't be able to meet for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. As Di Beichen's wife, she was very happy to see that he had such a good brother. That night, Di Beichen and Wen Ziren drank to their heart's content. The two of them drank and chatted since they were young. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying watched the two of them with a smile. Shangguan Yingying was also a very easy person to get along with. She had followed Di Beichen and Wen Ziren since she was young. Previously, she and Ziren had the same idea. They only hoped that Di Beichen could find a good match for himself. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, the two of them were very good to Bailey Hongzhuang. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying's friendship was quickly established. Even though it could not compare to their 20 years of relationship, it was still very good. The next day before dawn, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen left a letter in the palace and prepared to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the palace that was specially built for her. Her eyes flashed with a complicated and nostalgic light. She hoped that in the future she would be able to come back here again and reunite with her family. Di Beichen gently patted Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and said, "We will definitely come back." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. When she raised her head to look at Di Beichen, there was a bright smile on her face. "Let's go." Chapter 29:11. The two of them quietly left through the back door of Limitless Palace. Once they left through the front door, they would definitely be noticed by the other disciples. However, only they would use the back door. In order not to alarm everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's footsteps were very light. Soon, they disappeared through the back door of Limitless Palace. The next time I come back, I hope that everything will be better. Bailey Hongzhuang felt very regretful that she couldn't personally say goodbye to her parents. However, she didn't regret her choice. She only hoped that her parents wouldn't be too sad because of this. "We definitely will." Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a firm and persistent light as he said in a deep voice. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were halfway up the mountain, two figures suddenly appeared in front of them. It was obvious that they were waiting for them. Seeing these two figures, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes couldn't help but flash with a hint of astonishment. "Ziren, Yingying, why are you guys here?" Di Beichen looked at the two people in front of him in astonishment. This scene was really beyond his expectations. After Ziren saw Di Beichen and Yingying, he also sighed and said, "I knew that the situation wasn't as good as you said. The so-called 10 years of not acting up should be a lie." When these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's complexion changed. They thought that they had deceived everyone. They didn't expect that Ziren actually saw through everything. Although the two's expression didn't change much, it still didn't escape Ziren's eyes. He couldn't help but say, "Don't hide it from me. We've been brothers for so many years. How can I not know what kind of plan you have in mind?" Saying these words is just to let everyone relax. If the cold ice sacred lotus really has such a good effect, Hongzhuang wouldn't have been so anxious when you were unconscious. Everyone knew how outstanding Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were. Bailey Hongzhuang definitely wouldn't ignore the cold ice sacred lotus. However, she didn't use it before. This meant that Bailey Hongzhuang believed that the cold ice sacred lotus wouldn't be able to achieve a good effect. If his guess wasn't wrong, Bailey Hongzhuang must have been at her wit's end when she was at her wit's end. Last night, when Di Beichen drank with him, his feeling was even more obvious. In the past, Di Beichen rarely took the initiative to drink with him. This unusual style was very much like saying goodbye. Therefore, early in the morning he and Shangguan Yingying waited at the back of the mountain. If Di Beichen and Shangguan Yingying hadn't left, it would undoubtedly be for the best. But now, it seemed that the situation was exactly as he thought. Hearing Ziren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. A trace of helplessness appeared on their faces at the same time. "Since you've seen through everything, then I won't hide it anymore. We are indeed going to Penglai Island by ourselves. If you really think of me as a brother, then don't tell everyone about this. The reason I'm sure you know." Di Beichen looked at Ziren calmly. They had already made up their minds. No matter what, it couldn't be changed. Ziren looked deeply at Di Beichen and said, How long can you last after consuming the cold ice sacred lotus? Chapter 29:12. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Xiren couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. 1 or 2 years at least the situation is better than I expected. Otherwise, if you go with Hong Zhuang like this, if there is a problem with your physique, wouldn't Hong Zhuang be alone on Penglai Island? This is really too dangerous. Shangguan Yingying also frowned, not to mention that Bailey Hong Zhuang and Shangguan Yingying's cultivation would be at the bottom of Penglai Island. Di Beichen's physique was also an unstable factor. Just thinking about it made her feel that there were too many variables. Di Beichen's eyes were deep. This was also the point he was most worried about, and also the reason why he didn't want Bailey Hong Zhuang to accompany him. However, Bailey Hong Zhuang was so insistent, even if he disagreed there was no use. I have confidence that there will be no problem. Bailey Hong Zhuang's voice was firm and confident. Now they had no way out, it was better to be confident in themselves. Seeing Bailey Hong Zhuang's attitude was so firm, when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying also looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang with a sigh, in their hearts they couldn't help but feel happy for Di Beichen. Marrying such a wife was really Di Beichen's great luck. Since you two have made up your minds, then we won't stop you. When Xiren said slowly after seeing Bailey Hong Zhuang and Shangguan Yingying's surprised eyes, he continued, however, I have a request. What request? My request is very simple, that is, we go together. When Xiren's elegant and handsome face revealed a smile, as bright as the sun gazed at Di Beichen and Shangguan Yingying. Obviously this was his plan long ago. At the same time, Shangguan Yingying also put away her previous serious expression, and a big smile appeared on her face. However, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichen's faces were full of shock. What did you say? Even with Di Beichen's calmness at this moment after hearing Xiren's words, he couldn't help but raise his tone and ask again. I said, if we want to go, the 4 of us will go together. We are also very interested in Penglai Island, since we want to explore it, let's explore it together. When Xiren said with a smile. Di Beichen's brows furrowed. Xiren, Hong and I have no choice but to go to Penglai Island. Why do you want to get involved in this muddy water? How is this muddy water? Is it that everyone who goes to Penglai Island is to go? That's not right. I heard that to go to Penglai Island, one must have a cultivation level above the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Could it be that you and Yingying have already broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm? Bailey Hong Zhuang looked at Xiren and Shangguan Yingying suspiciously. The reason why she and Di Beichen were qualified to go was because they had the inheritance of the blood aura field, but how could when Xiren and Shangguan Yingying go? When Xiren smiled slightly, since we have decided to go and take a look, naturally we are fully prepared, you don't have to worry. It's too dangerous to go to Penglai Island now, you guys better not go. Di Beichen's face became serious. I know you treat me as a good brother, so you want to accompany me, but I also treat you as my best brother. I can't watch you guys take risks for me. Xiren's actions made Di Beichen feel a wave of warmth, but he also made up his mind. Chapter 29:13. Seeing that Di Beichen's attitude was so unyielding, Xiren was not surprised. In fact, they had known each other for so long and already had a deep understanding of each other's character. You don't have to be in a hurry to reject me, I've already thought about this matter. Previously, before you woke up, Yingying and I returned to the Cloud Sword sect, and I had already made plans to head to the Penglai Island. Now that I see that you've already woken up, this is undoubtedly the best. If we go together, we can take care of each other. Although my strength is still slightly weaker than yours, at least the 4 of us working together is much stronger than the 2 of you. If you don't let Yingying and me go with you, then we won't watch the 2 of you take such a risk. As for what decision to make, you two should consider it carefully. Xiren crossed his arms over his chest, his face full of confidence. Immediately, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beichen fell into a dilemma. They did not expect that Xiren would appear out of nowhere and destroy their original plan. However, when Xiren's actions made them feel a trace of warmth. The matter of you going to the Penglai Island, your father agreed? Di Beichen could not help but ask. This matter was no small matter, and when Xiren was also the young sect master of the Cloud Sword sect. If he left easily, it would have quite a big impact on the Cloud Sword sect. When Xiren nodded, what do you think I went back to the Cloud Sword sect to do? Wasn't it just to discuss with my old man? However, after hearing Xiren's answer, Di Beichen was indeed even more puzzled. Uncle actually agreed to let you two go together? It's not like you haven't seen my old man's character. He feels that young people should go out and adventure. I usually stay in the Cloud Sword sect, but he feels that it's unnecessary to see me. This time, when he heard that I was going to the Penglai Island, he was extremely happy. Ziren helplessly shook his head. His face was filled with emotions. Obviously, under the torment of Sect Master Wen, he was extremely helpless. After hearing Di Baichen and Ziren's conversation, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with surprise. She did not know that Ziren's father's character was actually so strange. You don't have to think too much. My old man has been to the Penglai Island before, so he has some understanding of the Penglai Island. The reason why Yingying and I dared to go to the Penglai Island even though our cultivation has not reached the 5th level of the purple gold rank, of course, it's my old man. Since he's already so assured of me, what are you still worried about? So it's more fun. Shangguan Yingying and Yingying, it's more fun, it's to go to go to it, it's to go to the Ying. Yingying Penglai's. As young people, how can you not have the slightest bit of drive? If the two of you dare to do this, don't tell me we don't dare? Di Baichen had originally made up his mind to reject Ziren and Yingying Penglai, but after knowing that Sect Master Wen had agreed, his attitude gradually changed. Chapter 29:14. You've really thought it through? Of course. When have I, Ziren, ever regretted my decision? My old man said that as long as I can return safely from Penglai Island, my title as young sect leader can be removed. This is his final test for me. Di Baichen was silent for a moment, then nodded. Since you've already thought it through, let's go together. That's more like it. Ziren laughed. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying walked together at the back. Looking at the two brothers with their arms around each other's shoulders, they couldn't help but smile at each other. Before the sky brightened, the four of them quickly left Limitless Palace. Penglai Island was located at the extreme south of the Saint Continent. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three headed in that direction. Ziren and Shangguan Yingying had already learned a lot about Penglai Island. Hence, they were very confident on their journey. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's departure wasn't immediately discovered. This was because the two of them were always in closed-door cultivation. Mu Lingbing and the rest were very clear about this. In order to break through to Purple Gold Level 5 as soon as possible, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had been cultivating very hard. In fact, it wasn't just the two of them. Si Tuyen and the rest were also cultivating very hard. When Mu Lingbing and the rest realized that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had left, it was already 3 days later. When Mu Lingbing realized that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen hadn't appeared for 3 days, she couldn't help but want to remind them not to cultivate too hard. However, when she walked into Bailey Hongzhuang's room, she realized that there was no one in the room. There was only a letter left behind. When Mu Lingbing saw the letter, she had a bad feeling in her heart. When she opened the letter, her hands couldn't help but tremble. Mother, when you see this letter, Baichen and I will have already left Limitless Palace. Sorry we lied to you. Although the effects of the Sacred Frost Lotus are excellent, it can't suppress Baichen's physique for 10 years. Therefore, we only have 1 or 2 years to find those 2 medicinal ingredients. I know you don't want us to take risks for our own good, but at the same time, we don't want you to take such risks for us. Baichen and I have already discussed it. We will set off for Penglai Island on our own. You don't have to worry about us. Although our cultivation is not high enough, we still have a lot of means. I believe that after we reach Penglai Island, we will be able to return safely. I hope you don't come looking for us. Even if you come looking for us, I'm afraid you won't be able to find us. Instead, everyone will have to bear the risk. Whether it is Tiangang Sect, Limitless Palace, or the Lan family, they all need you to take charge. As long as we solve the problem of our physique, we will definitely come back as soon as possible. Forgive us for leaving without saying goodbye. Take care. Hongzhuang. After reading the letter, Mu Lingbing immediately told Lan Yunxiao and the others about the news. When they saw the letter Bailey Hongzhuang left behind, they couldn't help but stare blankly. Their expressions all turned unsightly. We were too careless. We actually believed Yishuan's words. Lan Yunxiao frowned, his face filled with regret. Chapter 29:15. Mu Lingbing's face was also filled with guilt. I was too careless. I didn't notice Yishuan's emotions. As Bailey Hongzhuang's mother, she should have paid more attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's situation, but she didn't even notice such an important matter. Seeing that everyone was beginning to blame themselves, Si Tuyen couldn't help but speak up. Since Hongzhuang and Baichen deliberately wanted to hide it from us, they definitely wouldn't have revealed any flaws. There's no need for everyone to blame themselves. He had watched Di Baichen grow up. Not revealing his emotions was an ability that a sect's young sect head should have. Thus, Di Baichen and Shangguan Yingying would naturally act the most natural when they wanted to deceive them. Although they had been careless, there was no point in haggling over it now that things had developed to this point. I wonder when Yixuan and the others left? Quickly chase after them and take a look. Mu Jin's furrowed her brows. With their cultivation, it's too dangerous for them to head to Penglai Island like this. Mu Lingbing shook her head. We haven't seen Yixuan and Baichen these past few days. We're not sure when they left either. At this moment Yu Linfeng suddenly spoke up. We haven't seen any traces of Xiren and Shangguan Yingying since 3 days ago. Could it be, Lan Yunxiao and the rest's expressions changed? You mean they left together? That's impossible. Mu Jin shook her head. Yixuan and Baichen do have the qualifications to enter Penglai Island, but Xiren and Shangguan Yingying aren't the inheritors of the Blood-Ground Abyss and their cultivations haven't broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Even if they wanted to go to Penglai Island, they wouldn't be able to do so. That's right, that shouldn't be possible. However, Si Tian suddenly spoke up. No, that's very possible. Everyone could not help but look at Si Tian when they heard that. They did not understand why Si Tian would suddenly say something like that. The Cloud Sword Sect's sect master went to Penglai Island before, and it said that he went there under the condition of not being at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. As for the specific method, no one knows. Xiren is his son. Maybe he has the same method, Si Tian said. Isn't this too risky? Would sect master allow Xiren to take such a risk? Mu Lingbing didn't understand. Even if sect leader had such an experience in the past, it must have been under special circumstances. Xiren was his only son, why would he allow him to take such risks? Si Tian shook his head. You don't know much about sect master Wen's character. He's an opportunist. He believes that cultivators should wander around and experience risks. This was the only way to reach a higher level of cultivation. This was the reason why sect master rarely encountered bottlenecks in his cultivation over the years. Based on my understanding of him, it's definitely possible for him to allow Xiren to go to Penglai Island. Lan Yunxiao and the others looked at each other and no longer doubted Si Tian. Among them, Si Tian was the one who understood sect master Wen's situation the most. Since Si Tian spoke so confidently, it must be close to the truth. Linfeng, how many days has it been since we last saw Xiren and the others? Nangongwu couldn't help but ask. Chapter 29:16. If that's the case, then they've already gone far. I'm afraid we won't be able to catch up even if we want to. Nangongwu's expression turned ugly. She really didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen in danger. Their future was uncertain, and it was hard to say whether they could return. Lan Yunxiao and the rest sank into silence. With Di Baichen's group of 4's speed, they had already gone far in 3 days. No matter what, we still have to go and look for them. Lan Yunxiao's voice was heavy, but his eyes were filled with determination and persistence. In the next second, Yu Linfeng and Lan Yunxiao quickly walked down the mountain. Even though they already knew, they were still unwilling to give up hope. Perhaps Di Baichen's group had just left, and they could still find them. Situ, what do you plan to do if we can't find Yixuan and the rest? Mu Jin's turned to look at Si Tian. Things had already exceeded their expectations, so they needed to carefully consider what to do next. Si Tian's usually calm face revealed a complicated expression. He looked again at the letter Bailey Hongzhuang left behind. His gaze was distant and calm as he looked at the rising sun. He slowly said, perhaps Hongzhuang's decision wasn't wrong. They have their own lives. Perhaps we've underestimated their strength. Mu Jins nodded. Whether it's Yixuan or Di Baichen, they have always had their own opinions. In fact, the two of them have always done things that we old fellows haven't been able to do all these years. Perhaps they will bring us even greater surprises and miracles. Mu Lingbing looked at Si Tian and Mu Jins in astonishment. Father, mother, you mean we're just going to let them go like this? They've already made their decision. Even if we stop them, they will still go. Since the children have already made up their minds, the only thing we can do as their elders is to support them. Si Tian sighed faintly. He couldn't help but think of Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang. These two children were his pride. He had watched Di Baichen grow up and knew Di Baichen's character very well. Although their cultivation was still lacking, since they dared to go, they must have a certain level of confidence. He believed that God would not mistreat them. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing fell silent, her eyes turning red. She and Hong Zhuang had only known each other for a short period of time, and now they were separated again. Most importantly, she did not know if she would have the chance to see her daughter and son-in-law again in the future. Lan Yunxiao and Yu Linfeng went out to search for a long time. When they returned 3 days later, they couldn't help revealing a trace of dejection. I can't find it. There was no trace of Bailey Hongzhuang's group in the vicinity. There were many routes to Penglai Island. They had no way to confirm which route Bailey Hongzhuang's group had taken, so it was impossible to chase after them. After Lan Yunxiao returned, he planned to pack his luggage. He also wanted to head to Penglai Island to investigate. Perhaps he could find Bailey Hongzhuang's group there. However, Lan Yunxiao was stopped by Situ Yen. There was no need. Since Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 had already set off, if they continued to chase after them, it would just be more people taking the risk. Chapter 29:17. Lan Yunxiao was originally unwilling, but after hearing Si Tian's words, he remained silent for a long time before finally nodding his head. In his heart, he couldn't help but hope that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen could return safely. Otherwise, he would definitely regret it for the rest of his life. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 headed towards Penglai Island. However, Penglai Island was very far away. Even with their speed, it would inevitably take them a long time. The 4 of them trekked through mountains and rivers. If they had a flying beast, they would ride it. If they didn't, they could only rely on their own strength. Fortunately, the 4 of them weren't spoiled people and were very used to this kind of trekking through mountains and rivers. With the 4 of them traveling together, it was a lot more fun. In the mountain range, Di Beichen and Xiren were catching fish and hunting demonic beasts respectively. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying were preparing to roast fish and meat later. Fortunately, we brought enough seasoning. Otherwise, if we kept eating dry rations in this mountain range, it would really be tasteless. Shangguan Yingying chuckled. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Looking at the blue sky, white clouds and crystal-clear lake, a trace of a smile appeared on her lips. If we weren't worried about Beichen's health, this trip would really be like a scenic tour. It's very comfortable. With the increase in her cultivation, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer needed to be as careful as before when walking in this mountain range. As long as they didn't encounter the peak demonic beasts in this mountain range, they wouldn't be in any danger. Thus, it was a completely different mentality. That's true. Shangguan Yingying faintly smiled. In the past, whenever we went out to train, it would always be Xiren and Beichen going together. Most of the time, I would stay in the sect to cultivate. At that time, I always wanted to go with Xiren and the others. Although they were covered in wounds every time they came back, they had also improved a lot. I could feel that not only had their strength improved, but also their spirit and personality had changed. Therefore, I always hoped to have the opportunity to go out with them and train. I thought that there would be no hope for me in this lifetime, but I didn't expect that there would be a chance now. It really makes me happy. Bailey Hongzhuang's dark and clear eyes flashed with surprise. Why didn't you go with them in the past? My cultivation method is more suitable for staying in the sect. Shangguan Yingying sighed and her pretty face revealed a look of lament. Xiren's father is a cultivation maniac. Every time he takes Xiren to a place to cultivate, it is always very dangerous, unlike Sect Master Situ who is more peaceful. However, he often communicates with Sect Master Situ, so Xiren and Beichen have always been cultivating with Sect Master Situ during this period of time, and with Xiren's father during this period of time. From Xiren's current appearance, it's really hard to imagine that he spent his childhood like that. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a faint smile. Xiren had always been smiling mischievously, but now it seemed that his serious appearance was very different from usual. Isn't Beichen the same? Shangguan Yingying asked back. That's right. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying were talking, Xiren's voice came from behind. Chapter 29:18. Do I need your help to catch fish? I've already caught it. Di Beichen slowly walked out of the river, looking at the proud Xiren behind him, his handsome face full of smiles. Seeing that he had nothing to show off, Xiren curled his lips. Whether it's catching fish or birds, I'm good at it. It's a pity that I don't have a chance to show off. Then I'll leave this task to you in the future so you can perform well. Xiren was stunned. Forget it, I can't take all the limelight. A good brother should share half of it with you. Di Beichen and Xiren quickly processed the fish and meat, then handed it over to Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying. The 2 women also began to get busy. Our speed is already quite fast. However, the Xingshan continent is truly not small. At this rate, I'm afraid we'll need another half a month to reach the southernmost region. When Xiren sighed. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Penglai Island is a place that transcends the Xingshan continent. In order to not be discovered by ordinary people, it should be located so far away. Speaking of which, I'm really curious about what kind of place it is. It's obviously a transcendent existence, but there are so few people who know about it. I've heard some things from my old man. The reason why no one has discovered Penglai Island is because it's a very, very far away island. As long as the average person's brain isn't squeezed by the door, they won't go there. However, Penglai Island is very large. It's not just an island but a combination of many islands. The largest island is called Penglai Island. My old man was very interested when he found out about the existence of such an existence. He set off in a fit of passion, but his luck is very good. He found some opportunities there, so he hoped that I would go and take a look. So, we still have to travel by water for a while. Di Beichen said. This section of the waterway is the most important. When Xiren nodded, his expression turning serious. When we were in the Xingshan continent, most of the demonic beasts we encountered were on land. In fact, the number of demonic beasts in the sea is no less than that on land. Plus, not many people pass through that area, so the number of demonic beasts there is naturally even more astonishing. We don't have much experience at sea, so we need to be extra careful when we pass through that area. My old man specially reminded me of this. Hearing Xiren's words, Di Beichen's face flashed with a hint of seriousness. He hadn't thought of this before. Since Sect Master Wen specially reminded us, it seems that this place is really dangerous. We have to be prepared. In my opinion, the other things are fine. The most important thing is to learn how to swim first. Otherwise, once you encounter a demonic beast in the sea and you're a non-swimmer, it'll be really troublesome. Xiren sighed. In the next second, Di Beichen's gaze froze on Xiren's body. Are you talking about yourself? As soon as these words came out, Xiren was also stunned. I don't know how to swim, but I shouldn't be the only one who doesn't know how to swim, right? Chapter 29:19. Seeing the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, when Xiren was like seeing a life-saving straw and quickly asked, Hongzhuang, can you swim? The sudden news made Bailey Hongzhuang slightly stunned, then nodded and said, yes, what's wrong? She could swim since she was a child, but she rarely had the opportunity to swim. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, when Xiren could not help but wail and fall to the ground with a loud bang. Heavens, could it be that the only person in the world who can't swim is me, an extraordinarily handsome man? Seeing when Xiren suddenly say such words, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen in confusion, not understanding what this meant. Shengguan Yingying also looked like she didn't understand. When we go to Penglai Island, we have to go through a long waterway and there are monsters in the sea, so... Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang with deep meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying immediately understood. If it was just an ordinary sea, even if the cultivator himself was not good at water, there would not be any problem with his cultivation. However, there were monsters in the sea, so the situation was much more complicated. Most of them didn't have much contact with the monsters in the sea, and the information they learned was often learned from the scrolls. However, no matter which book told them the same content, that the monsters in the sea were more dangerous than the monsters on land, because the monsters in the sea had the advantage in the sea. Once encountering a powerful monster, it was definitely not a simple thing to pass through easily. On the contrary, their life may be in danger at any time. Even with their cultivation, they couldn't guarantee their safety because the lifespan of the monsters in the sea was often very long, and Penglai Island was uninhabited. The monsters, there were almost no other dangers except for their natural enemies, so whether it was the number or the strength, they were probably very terrifying. Under such circumstances, it would be really bad if they could not swim. So, before we go to Penglai Island, there is one more important thing. That is, we have to teach Xiren how to swim, right? Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. Shengguan Yingying's face showed a touch of helplessness. I was wondering why I felt that Xiren was a little strange recently. It turns out that he was worried about this. Learning to swim is not a difficult task. I should be able to learn it very quickly. Don't worry. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. It's just that we're going to the deep sea, so we have to make use of this time to practice more. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen, Shengguan Yingying, and when Xiren all shook their heads. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but wonder, what did I say wrong? If he really learned to swim so easily, he wouldn't have such an expression now. Shengguan Yingying sighed. I really don't know what to do about this. Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to sit beside him and said, Ziren is a natural landlubber. He has no problem doing other things, but when it comes to the water he can't swim at all. When he was young, Yingying and I spent a lot of effort to teach him to swim, but now he is still like this. Chapter 29-20. The river is so shallow, of course I can catch fish. If it's in the sea then, when Ziren scratched his head. The more he spoke, the more guilty he felt. His voice also became softer and softer. Then what should we do? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. She really didn't expect Wen Ziren to have such a weakness. After so many years he still hadn't learned to swim. Perhaps his fear of water wasn't just a little bit. Di Beichen patted Wen Ziren's shoulder. Let's find a place where the river is deeper. You should learn to swim well. This time you really can't escape. Beichen, why do I have a bad feeling when I hear your words? Di Beichen smiled faintly. Don't worry, I'll be very gentle. When he said the word gentle, Di Beichen deliberately deepened his tone. However, Wen Ziren couldn't help but shiver. This was definitely not good news. Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but chuckle. Beichen, you don't have to be so polite to Ziren. I think we were too gentle to him in the past. That's why he hasn't been able to learn to swim. This time let's just be ruthless. Who knows, maybe he'll learn. Yingying, why are you so cruel to me? When Ziren clutched his chest and looked at Shengguan Yingying with heartache. It was as if he couldn't believe that these words had come out of her mouth. Shengguan Yingying, however, didn't care and continued to eat her grilled fish. We're already very tight on time. You should be ashamed that you've made such a mistake. If we still treat you like we did in the past, who knows how long it'll take you to learn. Hearing this, a serious look appeared in Ziren's eyes. This time, I really have to learn how to swim. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three set off after filling their stomachs. Now, the most important thing for them wasn't to hurry, but to let Wen Ziren learn how to swim. Chapter 29-21. Following that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying occasionally heard Ziren's cries and rejections coming from the pool. However, the three people present ignored him. Di Beichen, who had always been calm in the past, after hearing Shengguan Yingying and Bailey Hongzhuang's suggestions, he also used an iron fist method on Ziren. He did not allow Wen Ziren to refuse at all. It was as if he wanted to teach Wen Ziren how to swim in the shortest time possible. Although Ziren kept saying that he did not want to learn, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two also understood that this was probably the time when Wen Ziren was most determined. Wen Ziren was bound to go to Penglai Island. Therefore, learning how to swim was also an inevitable hurdle. On this point, Wen Ziren had already made up his mind when he decided to go to Penglai Island. However, he still could not learn after so many years. This knot in his heart was obviously not simple. Although Di Beichen and the other two said that they wanted Wen Ziren to learn how to swim as soon as possible, in fact, everyone had enough patience. From the moment they decided to embark on this path together, they were already partners in life and death. No matter what kind of things, they would bear it together. Di Beichen taught Ziren how to swim. Shengguan Yingying also went to help from time to time. Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated with the three beasties on the shore. When it was time to eat, the three beasties volunteered to go catch prey. The strength of the three of them now was not comparable to ordinary monsters. Moreover, with Baisher the Beast King, there was no need to worry at all. Ziren, what are you afraid of in the water? Shengguan Yingying saw that Ziren had no results after learning for a few days and could not help but frown and mutter. In other aspects, Ziren's learning speed had always been very fast. However, once in the water, when Ziren had no ability to learn at all. I don't know either. Ziren's face was bitter, his eyes filled with melancholy and helplessness. My reputation in this lifetime is going to be ruined by swimming. Everyone felt helpless. Originally, everyone thought that Ziren had a knot in his heart because of water, but he was unwilling to say it out loud. However, after some understanding, they realized that when Ziren did not have a knot in his heart, but he was afraid of water. Water was Ziren's natural enemy. I don't know if Father asked you to go to Penglai Island on purpose. If you want to go, you must overcome your fear of water. Shengguan Yingying sighed. Di Beichen patted Ziren's shoulder. These days they felt very helpless, but the most depressed person was Ziren. Don't be too anxious. We still have plenty of time. Take it slow and there will be progress. Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. I believe that you will be able to learn. Don't be anxious. Ziren looked at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang apologetically. The more they said this, the more embarrassed Ziren felt. If there was no time limit, he naturally did not seem to be anxious. However, Di Beichen's body condition still existed, and there was not enough time to begin with. Now that they had not arrived at Penglai Island, they had no idea what might happen on Penglai Island. Chapter 29-22. The reason why Shangguan Yingying was so anxious was also because of this reason. It was simply because she expected better from him. "Don't worry, I will definitely learn it as soon as possible," When Ziren said in a deep voice. His pitch-black and bright eyes were filled with determination. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other and smiled. They both believed that Ziren would definitely be able to overcome this difficulty. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were all working hard to cultivate. Now they had already replaced sleep with cultivation. Their cultivation was completely at the bottom of the Penglai Island. As long as they could increase their cultivation by a little, it would be extremely good for them. After all, if their cultivation was a little stronger, they would be able to have a little more protection. Originally, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was a little stronger than Ziren and Di Beichen's cultivation. This was because Di Beichen and Shangguan Yingying had absorbed enough energy in the divine pond of ice and snow to successfully step into the purple realm. However, Ziren and Shangguan Yingying were not ordinary people. Before this, they also had a certain amount of opportunities. This time, after they returned to the Cloud Sword sect, their cultivation had once again increased a little. Therefore, the four of them were now at the 3rd level of the purple realm. There was still a gap of 2 levels from the 5th level of the purple realm. At this level of cultivation, it would take a long time to increase 1 level. However, other than bitterly cultivating, everyone had no other way. They could only try their best to increase their cultivation. The next day, when Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two left their cultivation state, they discovered that when Ziren was actually not with them. The three of them looked at each other and a hint of surprise appeared in their eyes. Turning their gazes, the three of them discovered that Ziren had unknowingly started practicing holding his breath in the pond. Obviously, he wanted to suppress his fear of water. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were stunned, but their eyes gradually softened. "Ziren, you're up early." Di Beichen laughed and jumped into the pool. When Ziren smiled faintly. "I don't believe that I can't overcome this obstacle. It will affect my usual image too much." Everyone's heart was slightly moved. They could all see that Ziren was forcing himself. There was a touch of guilt in Shangguan Yingying's eyes, and she couldn't help but murmur, "Hongzhuang, was I too harsh and impatient?" Actually, Ziren didn't want it to be like this. "Ziren knows what you're thinking. He's not a petty person." Bailey Hongzhuang comforted Shangguan Yingying. "Don't worry. This kind of thing has to be done step by step. He hasn't overcome it for so many years. The obstacles in his heart are getting bigger and bigger. Even if he wants to overcome it now, it's not something that can be done in a short time." Shangguan Yingying nodded. "I shouldn't criticize him anymore." Looking at Shangguan Yingying like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. Although Shangguan Yingying usually had the image of a tigress that Ziren had described, after interacting with her for a while, she understood that Shangguan Yingying was just a person with a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Although she always said all kinds of bad things about Ziren, she was still thinking about Ziren in her heart. Her heart was very soft. Since she could see this point, when Ziren naturally had a deeper understanding of this point. Chapter 29-23. Ever since then, when Ziren had been working hard to overcome his fear of water. Gradually, his progress was noticed by everyone. At the very least, when Ziren was now very familiar with water and no longer felt unfamiliar or fearful. Seeing this change, everyone's hearts leaped with joy. It seemed that success was not far away. On this day, when Ziren's head popped out of the water and excitedly shouted to Shangguan Yingying, "Yingying, I've learned it." Shangguan Yingying could not help but hurriedly stand up and look at when Ziren swimming in the pool. Her face was full of joy. "It's true. You've really learned it." Di Beichen's face was full of smiles as he stood beside Wen Ziren. The bright sunlight shone on the two strong and handsome figures and the water droplets reflected a bright and resplendent light. However, none of this could compare to the brilliance of their smiles. "Ziren, you're amazing." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and gave Ziren a thumbs up. When Ziren stroked his hair proudly and raised his chin 45 degrees saying, "Of course I'm a handsome man who can do anything." If when Ziren had said such a thing under normal circumstances, everyone would have laughed at him. However, at this moment, everyone let him be. After when Xiren had mastered the skill of swimming, he had become the most interested in water among the four of them. Usually, when they were hurrying along, as long as there was a river at the place where they were stationed, when Xiren would definitely go back and swim. From time to time, he would sigh and lament that he could not understand why he was afraid of water in the past. He only felt that it was inconceivable that something like that had happened to him in the past. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were also silent. This guy was also the most shameless person in the world. Under such continuous practice, when Xiren's swimming skills became better and better, everyone no longer had to worry that when Xiren would be in danger because he was not good at swimming. Finally, under the relentless haste of the four people, they successfully arrived at the extreme south. Looking at the vast ocean in front of them, a hint of surprise and confusion appeared on the faces of the four of them at the same time. Even though they already knew that this would be a very large sea area, they could only see the boundless sea in front of them. They couldn't see any further than that. They only felt like they were in a sea of clouds. As far as the eye could see, not a single island could be seen. Only the azure sea water and a vast expanse of white fog could be seen in the distance. I don't know how long it will take for us to reach Penglai Island. Shangguan Yingying stared blankly at the sea of clouds in front of her. It seemed that the distance between Penglai Island and the island was really far. We can't determine the exact time. We can only take one step at a time, Di Beichen said in a deep voice. Stepping onto this sea would be a brand new journey for them. What are you afraid of? Back then, my old man set off alone without caring about anything. The four of us are much more prepared than my old man back then. All these years, my old man always felt that my ability was not enough. I'll take this opportunity to let him understand my true strength. In the next second, when Xiren directly took out a gold-and-silver ship from his Jianghu bag. Chapter 29-24. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were immediately attracted by the ship. The material was extraordinary. Is the hull made of mithril? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, when Xiren's eyes lit up, and he gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. I didn't know you were an expert. This mithril is mixed with some deep-sea black gold, which greatly enhances the stability of the hull. The ability to break the waves is also excellent. Such a ship is really a weapon when drifting on the sea. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were full of admiration. Although they had also prepared a ship, it was completely different from the ship that when Xiren had taken out. At least, with such a ship, even if they were attacked by demon beasts, they didn't need to worry about the hull being destroyed. It greatly increased their safety. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang see through all the mysteries of the ship, when Xiren's eyes flashed with a thick color of surprise. This ship was given to me by my old man before I left. In order to give us a little more protection, what you said is really the same as my old man. Before my old man introduced it, I didn't know that this ship had so many benefits. How did you see it? When Xiren's handsome face was full of curiosity, Bailey Hongzhuang's words really surprised him. There are many things that you don't know. My wife's ability is not something that an ordinary person like you can understand. Di Beichen joked. When Xiren's face fell. You are simply a wife slave. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I have dabbled in inscription techniques, so I have some understanding of these rare metals. When Xiren showed a look of understanding. He had long heard that Bailey Hongzhuang was a multi-talented person, and many of her abilities were beyond the scope of understanding. They could only be said to be geniuses in cultivation, but Bailey Hongzhuang was a genius in many aspects. Let's go. Xiren took the lead to step on the ship, and then extended his hand to Shangguan Yingying. Shangguan Yingying also walked on the ship. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang walked on the ship together, and the three beasts followed behind. The four people and three beasts began their days of drifting on the sea. The sea is boundless. As long as we keep going south, we should be able to reach Penglai Island. Xiren slowly said. In such a sea area, their ship was simply too small. That's right, Penglai Island is at the southernmost part of the Xingxian continent. Di Beichen nodded. Xiren and I will be responsible for controlling the direction of the ship. Wife, you and Yingying should have a good rest. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying both smiled and nodded. When you are tired, it's our turn. Us too. The three beasts were unwilling to be left out. It seems that we have sufficient manpower. Everyone chuckled, and the days of drifting on the sea began. The days of drifting on the sea were undoubtedly extremely boring. They were surrounded by seawater, and there was still no end in sight. There was no village in front of them, and there was no shop behind them. This feeling was really uncomfortable. However, the four of them were cultivators and had long been accustomed to rough days. Therefore, the environment that looked exactly the same every day did not drive them crazy. Chapter 29-25. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had also fought with the demonic beasts. Just as they had expected, the demonic beasts in the sea were very powerful and their numbers were very large. Once they were entangled with a group of demonic beasts, it would be a huge problem. Even with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's cultivation, they had suffered heavy injuries when they encountered a group of demonic beasts. Fortunately, the hull of the ship was sturdy enough. Otherwise, the demonic beasts would have broken it and the four's situation would have been even more dangerous. On the surface of the sea, once they fought, the demonic beasts would have the upper hand because they could dive into the sea at any time. It could be said that the enemy was in the dark while they were in the light. They had to be vigilant at all times to guard against the enemy's sneak attack. This was undoubtedly very tiring and exhausting. Even with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other threes taking turns to watch over them, it was still an extremely tiring task. There were very few people heading towards Penglai Island. Hence, these demonic beasts had treated Bailey Hongzhuang and the other threes as delicious food and had their eyes fixed on them at all times. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other threes could be said to be transitioning from one demonic beast's territory to the next. They were really helpless. As the king of the land, the white lion's aura had a certain effect. However, it was far less effective than when it was in the mountains. On the contrary, once the white lion released its aura, it could easily attract some extremely powerful demonic beasts to compete with it. This caused Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to fall into an even more dangerous situation. It was really frustrating. It seems that we have underestimated the terror of the demonic beasts in the sea. Xiren sighed faintly. Thinking back to when they had just started drifting on the sea, it was still alright and there were not many problems. However, as they gradually went deeper, the demonic beast's powers continued to increase. He could only feel that under the seemingly calm sea, there were countless demonic beasts piled up. He finally understood why only cultivators of the 5th level of the Purple Realm and above could enter Penglai Island. In fact, cultivators who had not reached this level of cultivation would never be able to cross the sea, let alone reach Penglai Island. The number of these demonic beasts is too shocking. Once we encounter a group of demonic beasts, it's like poking a hornet's nest. Just thinking about it makes me scared. Shangguan Yingying shrunk her neck, as if she was thinking about being attacked by a group of demonic beasts a few days ago. If they were on land, even if they encountered a group of monstrous beasts, they still had a way to escape. However, on the surface of the sea, there was really no other way except to barge through. I don't know. How much longer until we reach Penglai Island? Recently, the Yao beasts we encounter are getting stronger and stronger. Thankfully, these powerful Yao beasts do not appear often. Most of them are probably cultivating themselves, otherwise our situation would be much worse. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black eyes flickered with a sigh. She felt that they had finally come into contact with the true power of the Xingxian continent. Ever since she had transmigrated, she had always felt that the Xingxian continent was much weaker than it was 1,000 years ago. But now, it seemed that it was not that the Xingxian continent's power had weakened, but that all the powerhouses had moved to one place. Even though she had yet to reach Penglai Island, she could tell how powerful Penglai Island was from the current situation. Chapter 29-26. Di Beichen's handsome and resolute face flashed with a dignified look. With their current strength, if they were to encounter a group of monsters again, it would be really dangerous. Most importantly, as they ventured deeper into the forest, the strength of these demonic beasts continued to increase. The demonic beasts' sneak attacks and ability to hide their auras were not comparable to the demonic beasts they had encountered before. If they were slightly careless and were ambushed, it could attract other underwater monsters. It was no different from poking a hornet's nest. In my opinion, we should upgrade from 1 person to 2 people guarding this place. The Yao beasts here are getting more and more cunning. It's safer this way, Wen Xiren suggested. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded in agreement. With their cultivation, it was like walking on thin ice. If they were not careful, their lives would be in danger. Thinking about it, even a 5th-level Purple Realm cultivator might lose their life if they were to be surrounded by monsters here. However, in the process of continuous fighting, everyone's combat strength was constantly increasing. During this period of training, the speed of improvement was much faster than cultivating in the sect. Pain and happiness, this must be how it felt. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating when she suddenly heard Shangguan Yingying's exclamation. She couldn't help but open her eyes. Look, there seems to be a boat in front. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look in the direction that Shangguan Yingying was pointing. In fact, they had been drifting on this sea for so long, but they had never seen anyone other than themselves. Sometimes, they even suspected that they were looking in the wrong direction. Otherwise, it would be too strange to not see anyone after drifting on the sea for half a month. Shangguan Yingying's voice couldn't help but give them a lot of hope. Being able to meet someone here at least proved that they were heading in the right direction. Bailey Hongzhuang looked carefully. Sure enough, there was a small boat in the distance. It looked very small in the vast sea, but it was visible at a glance. There really is someone here. Xiren's face showed a touch of surprise. After being here for so long, we finally see other people. It's really not easy. The people here are stronger than us in cultivation. We still don't know if they are friends or enemies. We should be careful. Di Baichen was not so optimistic. Instead, his face sank. As Di Baichen's voice fell, the smile on Xiren's face also faded a little. He also remembered his old man's reminder before they set off. There were many powerhouses on Penglai Island. Almost everyone had their own trump cards to succeed. It was because they were all powerhouses the competition was particularly fierce. Compared to the cruelty of Penglai Island, the things that Xiren had experienced in the past were nothing. After arriving at Penglai Island, don't believe everything that anyone says. Otherwise, you will definitely suffer a great loss. As long as we are sure that there are people here, it means that we are heading in the right direction. Then there is no need to worry. In my opinion, we should not have any interaction with the other party and go our own way. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Then let's do that. Chapter 29-27. The boat gradually grew from the size of a sesame seed to the size of a tangerine. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could see it more clearly, but they still did not know the situation of the other party. Just then, Baisha wrinkled his nose and said, "There's a strong smell of blood." As soon as these words came out, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others changed a bit. As a mystical beast, Baisha's nose has always been very sensitive. Since it had said this, it could not be wrong. The smell of blood? Shangguan Yingying furrowed her brows as a puzzled look flashed across her pretty little face. Could it be that there's internal strife and they're killing each other? Baisha shook his head. The smell of blood is very strong. If it's only a few people killing each other, there wouldn't be such a strong smell of blood. That means that the other party must be fighting against the mystical beasts. Perhaps they've been attacked by a horde of mystical beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment before speaking slowly. Hearing this, Baisha nodded and said, "That's very likely. So the other party is in trouble. Being surrounded and attacked by a horde of mystical beasts in a place like this is not a good feeling at all." Xiren sighed emotionally. If it was possible, he would never want to experience the feeling of running into a horde of mystical beasts again. Then what should we do now? If we continue forward, those mystical beasts might treat us as a team and attack us together. Shangguan Yingying's expression turned ugly. Even though she did not know what kind of mystical beasts they were, she knew that they would not be easy to deal with. However, even if we continue to stay here, once those mystical beasts finish off the fellow on the boat, we'll still be attacked as long as we pass through that area of the sea. Xiren said in a low voice. Based on their understanding during this period of time, they discovered that as long as the smell of blood wafted out, the mystical beasts in the sea would become excited. The chances of them being attacked would also greatly increase. Let's continue to move closer and see the situation before we make a decision. Di Baichen's pitch-black eyes flickered with a wise and calm light. They were still uncertain about the situation and could only take one step at a time. All right. Xiren nodded and continued to steer the small boat forward. As they gradually approached, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could see the situation in front of them more clearly. As it turned out, there were a total of 2 cultivators on the ship, and they were currently fighting to their heart's content. A thick smell of blood spread out from the 2 of them. The clear seawater nearby had already been dyed red. Even though they were still some distance away, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 could see the terrifying number of demonic beasts. This should be an aquamarine thornfish. Its combat ability is comparable to a cultivator of the first level of the Purple Realm. In addition to the fact that the cultivator's combat ability is restricted by the sea, the aquamarine thornfish's combat ability is comparable to a cultivator of the second level of the Purple Realm. An entire school of aquamarine thorns had appeared here. It was simply too terrifying. When Xiren couldn't help but exclaim. This situation was a little too terrifying. Once he was entangled by the school of aquamarine bramble fish, there was only a slim chance of survival. How did these two guys provoke the Shanghai blue thorns? This is too unlucky. Shangguan Yingying sighed. This was simply a nightmare for cultivators. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.